Hey there, I'm Talia and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here at Workweek Lunch, we are all about learning how to meal prep without being restrictive. So today we're going to talk about how to start intuitive eating and what to expect. Let's get to it. If you have never heard of intuitive eating before, I recommend going back and watching our first video where we introduced the 10 principles of intuitive eating. I'll link it here so you can go back and watch that first to get an understanding of what we're talking about and then come back to this video. But the general overview of intuitive eating is it's a form of eating that helps us heal from years of dieting and helps us disconnect weight and health so that we can respect our bodies without constantly worrying about if we're gaining, losing weight, and all that stuff. General disclaimer before we get into it that I am not a health professional, therapist, nutritionist, or anything like that. I've just read and studied a lot about intuitive eating and really love helping others get into it. In this video, I'm speaking largely from my experience and what I've read from experts. Let me kick this video off with just telling you a little bit about my experience when I found intuitive eating. I discovered it through podcasts, and before finding these podcasts though, I had already kind of ditched dieting and came to this point where I realized restricting food to reach optimal health just wasn't working for me. It wasn't part of the lifestyle I wanted to live because I found it very hindering and restricting in many ways, socially and just mentally, emotionally, physically. It was just enough. So I kind of ditched dieting before I discovered intuitive eating was even a thing. But once I discovered these podcasts, I dove in headfirst and just learned as much as I possibly could. And that's when things really started changing for me. So that's one of the first steps to start intuitive eating is to consume information about all the principles from experts. And I highly recommend listening to podcasts. I will list all of my favorite ones in the description, but the first few that come to mind are Food Psych, Don't Salt My Game, The Fuck It Diet, and Diet Culture Rebel. So I would check those out. And also, of course, books as well. I have a bunch listed in the description. You can start with, of course, Intuitive Eating. The 3rd edition I believe we're on is great to start with, as well as the Fuck It Diet book. Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison is excellent for more of like a science-based kind of perspective on intuitive eating. There are so many books out there though. I highly recommend diving in and seeing what resonates with you. That's step 1. Step 2 to start intuitive eating is to unfollow any social media account. Do an audit of your social media and unfollow any account that makes you think twice about what you're eating or kind of makes you think you have to improve your body because you don't. Okay, your body is perfect the way it is. You don't have to improve it. Let's just remember that. So this really helps you kind of just disconnect from diet culture on social media where it really thrives. You know, you see all these weight loss accounts, before and after accounts that are all about healthy swaps. Unfollow those accounts and instead start filling your feed with neutral accounts that talk about food like mine, where we don't talk about healthy swaps or anything like that. Start filling your feeds with body diversity. Follow people of all different shapes and sizes. It helps you kind of get used to the fact that we're not all supposed to be the same size. And I will also list a bunch of my favorite intuitive eating accounts run by dietitians and therapists below in the description. Again, if you're someone who uses social media a lot, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, this helps so much because then you are going to have all these daily reminders to stick to your journey. And your journey will not be linear, so it really helps to have that support. In addition to unfollowing these social media accounts that make you feel bad about what you're eating or your body, you might also want to consider donating your scale or giving it to someone else, just not to have the scale in the house. Avoid weighing yourself at the gym too, if that's what you do. And delete those calorie tracking apps. You will not need them. And I know it's scary, but I believe in you and you can do it. You can delete those apps and you'll be fine eventually. Steps 1 and 2, again, are more about information, right? Learning about intuitive eating and disconnecting from diet culture. But what about the food? What do you eat? So I would say step 3 is to slowly start introducing your trigger foods into your house over time. So what is a trigger food? This is gonna be any food that you feel out of control around, right? It's a food that you're gonna be like, wow, I eat so much of this food, I just can't be around it or else I'm gonna eat the entire thing. For me, that used to be cereal, peanut M&Ms, cookies. I love cookies. And I think those are the main three for me that I can remember. Of course, I also wouldn't have ice cream or regular pasta. I didn't bake with regular sugar. So when I learned about intuitive eating through podcasts, the first foods that I started bringing into my house were cereal, pasta, and regular sugar to bake with, because I was only using sugar alternatives and subsequently my baking sucked. So, you know, obviously you can make it work if you really need to use these alternatives, but I'm someone who does not need to make any of these swaps for any medical or health reason. So why am I using fake sugar? I don't know. Well, actually I do know, it's because of diet culture. Bringing food slowly back into your house, foods that you normally would be like, I never keep this in the house, is gonna help you get used to the idea of them being around and always being available. Because the more you restrict foods or categorize them in your mind as bad, the more you're gonna want them and crave them. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it works. Let me ask you, if you have apples or carrots in your fridge right now, are you constantly craving them or thinking about them? Probably not, because you know those are safe foods because diet culture deems them healthy and all. So they're just there, just hanging out, and you probably never think about them until you randomly see them or want a snack. So the point of bringing sugar foods back into your house is to kind of create that same mindset around them where they're just there, available anytime you want them. So eventually you're only gonna eat them when you truly want them, not just because they're there and you feel like you have to eat them because then you have to, you know, be perfect on your diet after. This is what we call the Last Supper concept, which is when, if you have ever, you know, had a binge eating session before, it's like, okay, I'm gonna just eat all of this and then I'm gonna be good for the rest of the week. That's the Last Supper mentality. And so by having these foods in the house all the time, you kind of avoid that because you know they're always gonna be there, and you don't feel the need to binge because you can just have more the next day if you want it. I know it's scary, but again, the key is just one food at a time. Start with one, like cereal or whatever, you know, your equivalent is. Let me know in the comments, by the way, what your food is that you're gonna bring into your house when you start practicing intuitive eating. Mine was cereal, and now I think we have, you know, I live with my partner and he loves cereal. We have it in the house all the time. I think I eat it like once a week, if that. I pretty much forget that it's there most of the time. And I used to be someone who would clean up, like just eat a whole box in one go. Also, if you're not ready to bring sugar foods back into your house, you can practice this when you're out eating at a restaurant too. Go for the menu items you usually avoid. You know, go for the menu items that you feel were too unhealthy and you would just restrict them. Just go for them and see what happens. You can't think about it, you just have to do it and see what happens. You're gonna be okay. Your body will figure it out, I promise. So step 4 is a little more vague, but I would say step 4 would be neutral reflection and curiosity about your eating, right? So as you're eating, you can reflect by just thinking about it, journaling, or writing notes in your phone, which is what I usually do. And trust me, if you are listening to podcasts and reading books about intuitive eating, this will be at the top of mind when you're eating. It's not going to be hard to think about how you feel when you're eating when you are listening to this content. So what are you looking for? Well, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to when you're feeling hungry, when you're feeling full. Of course, these are very simple, like hunger takes all kinds of different forms. For me, I notice that hunger shows up when I'm working and I'm like in the flow, but I can't stop, like food keeps entering my mind even though I'm really focused on work. That's how I know it's probably gonna be time to eat soon. Hunger doesn't necessarily mean your stomach is aching and growling. It can show up in a lot of different ways. Same with fullness. You know, you will eventually discover what level of fullness you're comfortable with and where, you know, you try and aim to be at every meal. And not every meal is gonna be the same. Some meals are more filling than others, and that's okay. One of my favorite ways to figure out hunger and fullness and just kind of zero in on that is to practice mindful eating. So that's when you are going to eat a meal with 0 distractions, no phone, no computer, try to eat alone, no TV, any of that stuff, just you and your food. I do not recommend doing this for every meal. It's gonna get depressing. Just try 1 meal a day for a week and see what happens. Seriously though, don't do it for every meal. When you're practicing mindful eating, you can focus on the flavors, the textures. You can ask yourself, do I even like this meal? What would change about this meal for me to like it more? What will I do next time? Oh, am I starting to feel full? When you have no distractions, you can really tune into all of these signals that you'd usually miss when you're, scrolling on TikTok or listening to a podcast or talking with a friend when you're eating. And eventually you'll be able to kind of tap into that without, eating with no distractions. Just take some practice. This is also a really good time to pick up on any food police thoughts. So one of the principles of intuitive eating, which I mentioned in my first video about this, is challenge the food police. I forget what number principle it is. It's basically challenging that voice in your head, or even the voices from people around you saying, oh, this is bad for you, or this is gonna make you gain weight. Start questioning that. Why do I think this? Where is this coming from? And is this actually true? Does this matter? Does this align with what I want in my life? It's really powerful to question our beliefs and thinking in this way and come from a place of curiosity, which is neutral, and not judgment. Don't judge yourself through this process. Be gentle with yourself. All right, step 5. So this is probably the hardest one. And again, your journey won't be linear. You're gonna have ups and downs, and you're gonna feel like you're failing intuitive eating, which by the way, you can't, because it's just eating. But step number 5 would be sitting with and accepting the fact that we have less control over our body size than we think. There are so many factors that affect health. And remember that body size is not a really amazing indication of health. They're all wrapped up together because of diet culture, but let's try and separate them as much as we can. Sometimes when you practice intuitive eating, some people, their weight will be the same. Mine didn't really change. Some will gain weight and some will lose weight. Eventually, you will find the idea is that you will arrive at your set point weight range, which is a range where your body is going to feel comfortable and thrive. Your set point weight range, the weight range that your body feels comfortable at, might not be the dream weight you had back in your dieting days. And the reason why that's so difficult to accept is because our culture is pretty fat phobic. And I just need you to remember that your body isn't wrong. It's our culture that is, basically. It's the way that bodies in larger bodies are perceived is why this is so difficult. It's not because inherently fat is bad, because it's not. It's just we come in all shapes and sizes, and the more we learn to accept this, the more our future generations will have an easier time with their relationship with food and their bodies and health. That being said, if in your intuitive eating journey, especially in the first few weeks when you're really trying to eat all the foods you restricted and your body's gonna change, it's normal. Intuitive eating involves rejecting the idea that you have to lose weight or manage your weight to maintain health. Before we get into this next part about what to expect when you start intuitive eating, let me just say, thank you for watching this far, and 2, if you're watching this and thinking, wow, this sounds so terrifying, what if I eat everything in my house and gain a bunch of weight? I'm gonna stop you right there. 1, is that really gonna happen? No. 2, where does the fear of gaining weight come from? The answer is our society and our culture, which is terrified of weight gain. It doesn't actually come from you, it comes from the culture we live in. So just keep that in mind. And the more we learn to accept bodies of all sizes, the easier it will be for generations to come. So what to expect when you start intuitive eating? 1, know that your journey just is not going to be linear. You will have ups and downs. You will have days where you feel like going back to dieting. Just keep that in mind when you feel like you want to go back to dieting. That's what kind of got you here in the first place. It works maybe in the very short term, but it's not a long-term sustainable approach to overall health. Just keep that in mind. Seriously, I have those days too. It's totally normal. Expect that the food police will pop up everywhere. You're going to be challenging the food police a lot in the beginning, especially maybe your family and friends might be like, wow, are you really going to eat that? What, aren't you afraid? Blah, blah, blah. Do your best to challenge it. Of course, every situation is different. When I started intuitive eating, one way I would navigate these conversations is I would change the subject, Or depending on who I was with, I just straight up say, this is boring, and change the subject because no one wants to be boring. In the beginning, you're gonna go through a process of eating a lot of foods that you formerly restricted, and you're gonna feel like you're eating so much, and that is normal, it's okay. Eventually, you will chill out with those foods because your body will learn to trust that they're always available. Like, I have cookies hanging out on my stove right now, and I haven't really thought about them until just now because I know that I can have a cookie every day if I wanted to or not. So you will get to that point eventually, and you will eventually crave vegetables. It's gonna happen. Our bodies are kind of designed to crave the foods that will make it feel nourished, like vegetables, fiber, protein, all that good stuff. So trust your body. I mean, the word trust is like my mantra. Like, I'm just constantly saying it to myself about everything, not just food. But I would say that period will happen to everyone. For some people, it's months. For some people, it's weeks. Maybe for some people, it's a year and a half. I think for me, it was probably a solid year of just introducing these foods back into my home. And even now, I'll go in the grocery store, years after starting intuitive eating, and find a food that I used to restrict that I'm like, oh, maybe I should buy that because I need to work on my relationship with that food. And also what will happen after that even is that you'll find foods that you thought were like really bad for you, or just they were so special, are not that tasty. Like, if you take a step back and actually taste a Dorito or like a Chips Ahoy cookie and compare it with something else, it's just like, you know what? This just isn't that tasty. It's just not that good. But the fact that it was restricted is what made it so good. The fact that it was bad in your mind is what made it good. So it's really fun to like, once you get to that neutral spot with food, to really taste and think about these foods and decide if you like them or not. Not just eat them because they're bad or they're naughty or whatever. In the beginning, it's gonna feel weird to not have rules around food. You might be like, what am I supposed to eat? This is again where you will want to make a list mentally or a physical list of foods you like. Takeout foods, different vegetables and fruits, different proteins. Just make a list of the foods you've enjoyed eating. Go through your camera roll. What did you take a picture of recently on your plate, that you liked? Make a list, and that's what you eat. You eat what you like. You don't have to eat what you don't like. It's pretty simple. Again, gentle nutrition is part of intuitive eating. It's not just eating whatever you want, and you're not just gonna end up eating pizza and donuts for days and days. It's a part of it. So my approach to gentle nutrition in meal prep is making sure that each meal somewhat has a protein, vegetable, and carb on my plate. It's not a hard and fast rule, so not all meals have all three, and that's fine, but it's something I think about. I'm not counting macros, I'm not weighing food out, but I'm making sure that I have a protein, vegetable, and a carb on my plate, and that seems to be a well-rounded, very neutral and flexible approach to gentle nutrition. And one more thing to expect, you will start seeing diet culture everywhere. Once you notice it, once you learn about it, it's like, wow, it's gonna show up just everywhere. And it might piss you off a little bit. And I know it pissed me off. It's like, wow, really? This is just everywhere. So those are my first 5 steps to starting intuitive eating and what to expect. Thanks so much for watching this. I would love to hear in the comments which tidbit you found most helpful. Let me know below, or what was helpful when you first started intuitive eating. The last thing I wanna say is, you've got this. You can do this. It is harder than dieting to get back in tune with your body's signals and cues and likes and dislikes, but I know you can do it, and I want you to keep going, keep at it. If you're able to, I recommend working with an intuitive eating certified dietitian or therapist in your journey, or you can join a paid program run by an intuitive eating certified therapist or dietitian. There are a bunch out there. Or if you can't do that though, continue to engage with all the free content that these amazing experts put out there every single day on all the platforms. It's all out there for you. And I know that with the support of this content and the community, you can do it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped. Click that subscribe button if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time.